Hey, welcome to a new video. The America Bomber project was Nazi Germany's ambitious effort to develop a long-range bomber capable of reaching targets in the United States. The plan emerged in 1942 from the desire to challenge Allied technological dominance and symbolically strike cities like New York. The Luftwaffe invited prominent aircraft manufacturers, including Messerschmitt, Junkers, Focke-Wulf, and Horton, to submit designs for a bomber with a range of 7,456 miles or 12,000 kilometers. Notable proposals included Messerschmitt Me 264, the most advanced design, though plagued by technical flaws and engine issues. Junkers Ju 390, a 6-engine aircraft with extended range. Rumors claim it may have flown near the U.S. East Coast, though evidence is lacking. Horton H18, a futuristic flying wing with possible radar stealth capabilities, though it never advanced beyond concept phase. Focke-Wulf Ta 400, a large bomber similar to the American B-29, which never reached production. The project was eventually abandoned due to technical hurdles, shifting priorities, and Germany's deteriorating war position. Although no America bomber ever flew a combat mission, several of its designs later inspired breakthroughs in post-war aviation technology.
Are you new to this channel? Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And before we start, also like the video.
Deep in occupied Manchuria lay one of the darkest secrets of World War II, Unit 731. Officially called the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department, it was actually a horrifying research facility for human experimentation in biological warfare. Established in 1936 by General Shiro Ishii, Unit 731 developed lethal pathogens such as plague, cholera, anthrax, and typhoid, which were tested on live prisoners under unimaginable conditions. Chinese civilians, Soviets, Koreans, and even Allied POWs were intentionally infected and vivisected without anesthesia to study disease progression. Victims were also exposed to extreme cold, dehydration, and chemical toxins. At least 3,000 people died in the facility, and tens of thousands more suffered during field tests. In one of the most infamous incidents, Unit 731 released plague-infested fleas over Chinese cities, like Ningbo and Changde, to test mass infection as a weapon. Despite these atrocities, many leaders of Unit 731 received immunity from prosecution by the US in exchange for their so-called research. This decision remains highly controversial to this day. It wasn't until decades later that more details emerged about what truly happened in this horrific facility. USAT Liberty was a U.S. Army cargo ship, built in 1918 in Kearny, New Jersey. Originally serving in World War I, it was brought back into service during World War II. In January 1942, while transporting railway parts and rubber from Australia to the Philippines, the Liberty was torpedoed by a Japanese submarine near the Lombok Strait. The crew managed to beach the ship at Talamban, Bali in an effort to salvage the cargo, and the vessel was subsequently abandoned. In 1963, seismic activity from the eruption of Mount Agung caused the ship to slip off the beach and settle on a sandy slope underwater, at depths ranging from 16 to 98 feet or 5 to 30 meters. Over the years, the wreck has become encrusted with coral and teems with marine life. More than 400 species of fish call it home. Today, it is one of Bali's most famous dive sites. Easily accessible from the shore, the Liberty offers opportunities for all levels of divers to explore its structure, with options for photography, night diving, and full ship exploration. The Porsche Type 64 marked the beginning of something legendary, the very first design to bear the Porsche name, laying the foundation for one of the world's most iconic sports car brands. Built in the shadow of the rising Third Reich, it was a streamlined propaganda vehicle meant to showcase Germany's technological superiority. Ferdinand Porsche designed the Type 64 for a propaganda race between Berlin and Rome, a symbolic gesture of Axis alliance. The car shared much of its engineering with the Volkswagen Beetle, but while the Beetle was modest and functional, the Type 64 was elegant and futuristic. With its teardrop-shaped aluminum body, enclosed wheels, and rear-mounted 0.26-gallon or 1-liter 4-cylinder engine, it looked like it had arrived from the future. Thanks to its light weight, it could reach speeds over 87 miles per hour, or 140 kilometers per hour, impressive for its time. Its advanced aerodynamics influenced Porsche designs for years to come. After the war, the sole surviving Type 64 ended up in private collections and was eventually auctioned for millions. Even today, the Type 64 is seen as the ancestor of all Porsche sports cars. Only 3 chassis were built between 1939 and 1940. One survived the war and is regarded as the mother of Porsche's entire sports car legacy. On the remote island of Bolshoi Tutors in the Baltic Sea, north of Estonia, lies a mysterious collection of abandoned World War II military vehicles. During the war, the island served as a strategic Soviet outpost, used for air defense, communications, and radar installations to monitor German movements in the region. Due to its isolation and rugged landscape, it played a crucial role in securing the eastern Baltic. After the war, the island lost its military significance, and Soviet forces withdrew. What remained were trucks, jeeps, and other Red Army equipment, vehicles that were never recovered. Over the decades, these rusting relics have been left to the elements. The combination of sea winds, damp forests, and harsh climate has slowly fused them with the landscape. Some still stand frozen along the shoreline, while others are nearly invisible beneath the moss and brush. For visitors today, these silent remnants form a powerful reminder of a forgotten front in the war across northern Europe. The further stop projects in Germania were ambitious plans devised by Adolf Hitler and his architect Albert Speer. These projects aimed to redesign various cities in Germany. The goal was to transform these cities into representative Führer sites that would reflect Nazi ideology and showcase their power of grandeur. For Berlin, Hitler envisioned monumental buildings, wide boulevards, and enormous Volkshalle that would surpass any existing structure in size and splendor. The Germania Project involved demolishing existing structures and constructing new ones. This was also an extensive urban renewal project aimed at replacing a significant part of Berlin with monumental buildings and wide boulevards. Of course, due to the outbreak of World War II and the subsequent decline of the Nazi regime, many of these plans were never fully realized. In 2021, a group of historical researchers in Poland suggested there might be Nazi tunnels hidden in an ancient volcano, potentially harboring top-secret Gestapo documents. The Association of Lovers of Upper Lusatia claims to have found a blueprint for these tunnels in the local archive in Lubin, a town in southern Poland. Despite numerous attempts to explore the tunnels, only a few shafts leading down into the dormant volcano have been accessible, leaving many parts unreachable. The researchers note that the sketch of the tunnels in the archive depicts them as an air raid shelter, but their dimensions of 10 by 10 feet or 3 by 3 meters significantly differ from the usual size of air raid shelters, which are typically 63 by 71 inches or 1.6 by 1.8 meters. This difference, along with the height and width of the tunnels, suggests they might have been intended for storage purposes. The possibility of the existence of the Krakow Gestapo archive containing valuable documents stems from the testimony of former Gestapo officer Kurt Heinenmeyer. He claimed that the documents were brought to a nearby town, which were on the orders of Hans Frank, the governor of occupied Poland at the time, where they were partially destroyed. However, the researchers suggest that some of these documents actually ended up in Luban, about 10 miles or 17 kilometers away, hidden in the volcano. Why they transported the archive so far only to burn it remains a mystery. The Führer bunker had a significant role during the final days of Adolf Hitler's life and the concluding phase of World War II. Located 28 feet or 8.5 meters beneath the ruins of Berlin, the bunker served as the fortified headquarters and residence of Hitler. Constructed with concrete walls, it provided shelter and protection from the escalating Soviet artillery attacks. The interior of the bunker comprised various rooms and facilities, including living quarters for Hitler and his entourage, a meeting room, a study, a dining area, and a communication center. The bunker was equipped with ventilation systems, generators, and other essential amenities to support daily life underground. After Hitler's death on April 30th, 1945, the significance of the bunker diminished, and today it no longer exists in its original form. It's been partially demolished and lies beneath the parking lot of an apartment complex. The site is marked with historical plaques, but most of the bunker is inaccessible to the public. Interestingly, above the remnants of Hitler's bunker now stands a children's playground. This contrast between a playground and a historical site serves as a poignant reminder of the transformation Berlin has undergone since the war. According to a legend, at the end of World War II, the Nazis allegedly stuffed a 100-meter-long train full of 300 tons of gold and other valuables, including the Amber Room. It's thought that they hid this train in an underground tunnel in the new Polish town of Walsberg. The legend was born when a local miner saw several German soldiers filling the train with treasures. However, the train was never found, despite many searches. And to this day, the mystery remains unsolved. Do you think this train really existed? The Kranich, or crane, was an early and innovative system that used sound to trigger automatic mechanisms. Instead of using contact or time detonators, this device responded to specific sound frequencies, such as the hum of aircraft engines or the rhythm of ship propellers. An integrated microphone acted as a sensor, connected to a mechanical or electronic activation circuit. When a recognizable sound pattern was detected, like an approaching plane or ship, the system sent a signal to trigger a response. This allowed precise timing for activation, without requiring direct contact. The technology was mainly used in systems designed to detect and disrupt enemy vessels, making operations more efficient and targeted. Though primarily experimental, the Kranich laid important groundwork for future sound-activated and acoustic detection technologies. Even today, this principle is used in civilian applications, such as sonar and underwater exploration. It may sound like science fiction, but Japan was actually working on a microwave-based death ray during World War II. The secret weapon, called Kugo, aimed to disable enemy aircraft by disrupting their engines or electronics with concentrated microwave radiation. Renowned physicist Shinichiro Tominaga, who would later win a Nobel Prize, was involved in the project. The concept was that a focused microwave beam could ignite fuel, disrupt ignition systems, or disable circuitry. Tests were carried out at Nihon University in Tokyo using magnetrons, the same technology later used in microwave ovens. Reportedly, the device could kill small animals at short range, indicating some level of effectiveness. However, scaling it up proved impossible. The energy needed to affect an aircraft at distance was enormous, and energy was something Japan sorely lacked in the final years of the war. USS Kittiwake was commissioned in 1946 as a Chanticleer-class submarine rescue ship. Measuring about 250 feet, or 76 meters in length, it was equipped to assist submarines in distress and conduct salvage operations. For nearly 5 decades, the Kittiwake played a vital role in various U.S. Navy missions, including the recovery of the Black Box from the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster. Decommissioned in 1994, the ship was donated to the Cayman Islands government. On January 5, 2011, it was deliberately sunk off the coast of Grand Cayman to create an artificial reef and diving site. Initially resting upright at depths of 16 to 66 feet, or 5 to 20 meters, the wreck was tilted onto its port side in 2017 by Tropical Storm Nate. Nevertheless, the Kittiwake remains a popular dive destination, accessible to divers of all levels, and home to a diverse range of marine life. The Heinkel Volksjäger was Nazi Germany's desperate final attempt to achieve air superiority. A jet fighter designed in the last months of the war, it was meant to be produced quickly, cheaply, and in mass quantities, even operated by young or barely trained pilots. Developed under the 1944 Emergency Fighter Program, the HE-162 was a response to the devastating bombings of German cities and industry. The aircraft reached speeds of over 560 miles per hour, or 900 kilometers per hour, making it one of the fastest planes of the war, and was armed with 2 0.8 inches or 20mm cannons. Production was extremely rapid, but also sloppy, and the use of non-strategic materials such as wood led to structural weaknesses. These fighters were hastily assembled and barely tested, resulting in numerous mechanical problems. Nevertheless, the concept was futuristic, a small, lightweight jet fighter capable of attacking enemy bombers in large numbers. In theory, even members of the Hitler Youth were supposed to fly it, hence the name People's Fighter. In practice, however, it came far too late and was far too weak to counter an overwhelming enemy. In April 2023, a rare T-34-76 tank from World War II was recovered from the Don River, near a village in Russia. The discovery was made by divers, soldiers from the Western Military District, and experts from Patriot Park, a military history complex near Moscow. The tank had been submerged for over 60 years and was likely swept into the river during an attempted bridge crossing. Built in the famous Stalingrad tractor factory, now Volgograd, the vehicle represents one of the Soviet military's most iconic tank models. It's especially valuable today, as most T-34s were destroyed in early battles with Nazi Germany. During the recovery operation, additional military remnants surfaced, including pontoons and transport vehicles. The T-34 was found in surprisingly good condition, and restoration teams hoped to make it operational once again. The discovery not only brings a tangible chapter of war history to life, but also strengthens Russia's military heritage, as well as its national memory. The Z3 computer was a German computer designed by Konrad Zuse in 1938 and completed in 1941. It's considered the world's first functional programmable computer. The Z3 was a significant milestone in the history of computing because it was the first fully operational electromechanical computer. It used approximately 2,300 relays and performed floating point calculations in non-binary arithmetic, with a word length of 22 bits. The Z3 was not a true electronic computer, but rather an electromechanical one. One major limitation was the lack of conditional branching, meaning it had to speculatively compute all possible outcomes of a calculation to be Turing complete. Despite this limitation, the Z3 provided a practical instruction set for technical applications in the 1940s. The Z3 was mainly used for aerodynamic calculations, but was unfortunately destroyed during a bombing raid on Berlin in late 1943. However, a fully functional replica of the Z3 was built in 1961, and it's now permanently exhibited at a museum in Munich.
Weingut I, also known as Vineyard I, is a secret construction project initiated in 1944. Its aim was to create an underground factory complex in a forest in Upper Bavaria, Germany. The primary purpose of this project was to produce jet engines. By that time, Allied forces had already gained control over German airspace. The underground factory network was conceived as a means to ensure the production of the Mi-62, even in the face of Allied dominance. In total, 10,000 workers were employed for the project, of which 8,500 were forced laborers and prisoners from a concentration camp network. More than 3,000 of these workers lost their lives due to overwork, malnutrition, and brutal treatment by the SS. The forced laborers endured harsh conditions, working 10 to 12 hours a day, with tasks such as moving gravel and working with concrete. Those who became ill or too weak to work were transported to Auschwitz. The documentary series Hunting Hitler delves into a fascinating FBI case that has remained unsolved for 70 years, investigating whether Adolf Hitler survived World War II. In one episode, the investigators embark on an intense manhunt to uncover the truth by exploring a Nazi house in the jungle. A team of renowned researchers, guided by historical evidence and witness testimonies, ventured into the remote jungle to search for any sign of possible presence. The Nazi house became the focal point of their quest, as they meticulously examined the location for clues and remnants that might shed light on the story. The significance of this investigation lies in the ongoing mystery surrounding Hitler's death. With conspiracy theories suggesting alternative scenarios, such as his escape to South America, we all know Hitler wanted to maintain a certain lifestyle, and his house, no matter how remote it is in the jungle, featured 2 bedrooms, custom-made tiles, and an above-average standard of living. Do you think this house was used by a high-ranking Nazi officer, or perhaps even Hitler himself? Let me know in the comments. It's well known that after World War II, many high-ranking Nazis fled to Argentina. But years later, Interpol agents discovered something that they had left behind. On June 8, 2017, in a suburb of Buenos Aires, a hidden passageway to a secret room was found that probably houses the largest collection of Nazi artifacts. During the raid, Argentina police, working with Interpol, discovered something very special. Hidden behind a seemingly innocent-looking bookshelf was a secret passageway, with a room containing about 75 Nazi objects. Among the objects was a magnifying glass used by Adolf Hitler himself. The objects were hidden for so long that officials believe they may have been stolen from high Nazi officials and eventually sold through an underground secret market.
The SS Wurfkörper. 361 was a late-war rocket system improvised by units of the Waffen-SS. It made use of repurposed Soviet BM-13 Katyusha rocket tubes, retrofitted with German warheads and propulsion systems. The goal was to create a functional form of rocket artillery using minimal resources. These rockets were launched from simple rails or mounted on trucks and had a range of approximately 3.7 miles or 6 kilometers. Although accuracy and performance were limited, the project illustrates how the SS began developing its own weapons, independent of the regular army. Historians believe the system was tested only on a small scale, as there are no detailed reports on its deployment or production. Some sources suggest it was more of a political vanity project than a practical military innovation. Eventually, the SS Wurfkörper 361 faded quietly into obscurity after the war. In the secret halls of Bletchley Park, British codebreakers built Colossus, the world's first programmable electronic computer, a landmark in technological history. Developed between 1943 and 1944, Colossus was designed to break the complex Lorenz cipher used by the German High Command, an encryption even more sophisticated than the famous Enigma machine. Engineer Tommy Flowers proposed a radical solution, an entirely electronic system based on vacuum tubes that could analyze coded messages at lightning speed. Colossus Mark I became operational in February 1944 and played a critical role in deciphering German communications ahead of D-Day. With 2,500 vacuum tubes and a speed of 5,000 characters per second, the machine was revolutionary. But the project was so secret that after the war, the machines were dismantled and their existence was hidden. It wasn't until the 1970s that the story of Colossus finally came to light, an unprecedented achievement kept in the shadows for decades. The SS Empire. Heritage was a British oil tanker built in 1930 by Armstrong Whitworth and Company in Newcastle upon Tyne. Originally named Tafelberg, the vessel was requisitioned by the British Ministry of War Transport during World War II and renamed Empire Heritage. It carried vital oil supplies across the Atlantic, a dangerous assignment during the Battle of the Atlantic. On September 8, 1944, while en route from New York to Liverpool carrying fuel in Sherman tanks, the Empire Heritage was torpedoed off the coast of County Donegal by German submarine U-482. The ship sank quickly, killing 113 people, including crew and passengers. Today, the wreck rests at a depth of approximately 217 feet, or 66 meters, and is considered a war grave. The Goliath tracked mine looked like a toy tank, but was actually a terrifying weapon. These small, remotely controlled tracked vehicles were designed to deliver explosives beneath enemy targets and then detonate from a safe distance. Developed by Borgward in the early 1940s, the Goliath carried 132 to 220 pounds, or 60 to 100 kilograms of explosives. Early models used electric motors, but later versions were fitted with gasoline engines for improved reliability. A wired remote control gave the operator full command over steering and detonation. In theory, it was ideal for urban combat and fortified positions. Drive the Goliath beneath a tank or into a bunker and blow it up without risking soldiers' lives. Some models were armored, but this provided little protection against machine gun or artillery fire. The cable connecting the Goliath to its operator was also vulnerable, often becoming the system's weak point in battle. They were deployed in Italy, on the Eastern Front, and during D-Day, but their slow speed, vulnerability, and high cost limited their success. Nevertheless, over 7,000 were produced, a very early precursor to modern military drones. Tourists visiting the Micronesian archipelago, Palau, often stumble across traces of a forgotten war. One such discovery came when kayakers found the wreck of a Japanese Aichi E-13A reconnaissance plane, lying upside down in a riverbed, wings spread, as if it's still waiting for its final mission. The wreck's now overgrown with moss and coral, blending seamlessly into Palau's lush tropical landscape. While the site is peaceful today, Palau was once the scene of intense fighting between Japanese and Allied forces, particularly around the island of Peleliu. The aircraft discovery is far from unique. Palau hosts more than 60 wartime wrecks, scattered across its seas, jungles, and caves. Not far from the river lies another near-intact Japanese fighter, hidden in a cave, which is now a popular dive spot. These wrecks are part of what is known as the Lost Fleet of the Rock Islands, and draw thousands of divers and history buffs each year. Thanks to its rich underwater heritage, Palau is widely celebrated as the wreck diving capital of the world.
The Horton H18 was a German prototype fighter bomber, designed by Reimar and Walter Horton during World War II. It's often known as the first stealth bomber due to its design features that made it less visible to radar. The H18 was a flying wing aircraft, meaning it had no redundant control surfaces, which helped reduce air resistance and decrease visibility on radar. It was developed in response to German Air Ministry's requirements for a bomber capable of carrying 2,200 pounds of bombs over a distance of 621 miles at a speed of 621 miles per hour. Additionally, the aircraft could reach an altitude of 49,200 feet, and it was powered by 2 jet engines, featuring a delta-shaped wing. The H18 was intended as a fast bomber, capable of carrying a significant payload over long distances. However, the aircraft was never put into service, and only a few prototypes were built. The reasons for not going into production are diverse and include the end of the war, as well as technical challenges and changing of priorities of the German Air Ministry. As the advancing Allied forces took over German airports and factories in central Germany, they stumbled upon the remnants of a bat-like jet bomber. Covered in carbon and plywood, it was designed to be harder to detect by radar, making it perhaps the world's first stealth aircraft. Its unique shape, resembling a mix between a Star Wars snowspeeder and a U-2 spy plane, featured wings that were bent back at a sharp angle. This design allowed the aircraft to evade radar installations and fly unnoticed by enemy observers. The Horton H9 not only possessed stealth capabilities, but also exhibited exceptional performance. The speed and agility of the jet fighter made it a formidable aircraft that surpassed its counterparts. The Horton brothers, the creators of this innovative aircraft, envisioned its potential not just as a fighter, but also as a bomber. They hoped to equip the plane with a 1-ton bomb, and even consider arming it with unguided rockets to attack enemy bombers. The USS Lexington, also known as Lady Lex, holds a significant place in the history of maritime warfare. As one of the iconic aircraft carriers of the United States, the USS Lexington played a crucial role in World War II. It participated in nearly every major operation in the Pacific Ocean. Aircraft squadrons engaged in intense aerial combat, successfully destroying 372 enemy planes in the air and an additional 475 on the ground. They had a profound impact on the outcome of various confrontations and provided vital support to Allied forces. In 2018, the ship was discovered in the Coral Sea, approximately 497 miles or 800 kilometers off the coast of Australia. While the ship played a pivotal role, it was scuttled in May of 1942 to prevent it from falling into enemy hands. The discovery of the ship in relatively good condition marked a remarkable achievement in the field of marine archaeology. Finding a World War II bomb shelter in your apartment building after going through an old closet is pretty unusual, huh? That's exactly what happened when a woman named Mia Gray was cleaning out her pantry in her apartment and made the discovery of a lifetime. During World War II, Edinburgh, the capital of Scotland, was bombed dozens of times. At the time, several shelters were built. Most of these were placed in courtyards and gardens. The shelter that Mia found was in an unusual place, namely in an apartment building. What she found in the shelter included bunk beds, war signs, and a reinforced roof.
The Horton H18 was a bold yet unfinished project from the final years of the war. Designed by the innovative Horton brothers, it was a jet-powered aircraft with an advanced flying wing design, radically ahead of its time. A flying wing aircraft lacks a traditional fuselage and tail. Everything is integrated into one broad aerodynamic surface. This design reduces drag, improves efficiency, and makes the aircraft harder to detect using conventional radar. The Hortons had already built successful test aircraft like the Ho-229, an early forerunner of modern stealth technology. The H.18 was envisioned with 6 jet engines embedded in the wings, capable of flying over 621 miles per hour, or 1,000 kilometers per hour with a range of more than 4,350 miles or 7,000 kilometers. It was intended to be a long-range strategic bomber. After the war, the design plans and remaining components fell into Allied hands. The aircraft's innovative shape and stealth potential went on to inspire later projects in both the US and the Soviet Union, the most famous example being the American B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. Of all the unusual weapons developed during World War II, the Bat Bomb may have been the weirdest. Under the codename Project X-Ray, the US devised a plan to drop thousands of bats equipped with tiny napalm charges over Japanese cities. The idea came from American dentist Lytle S. Adams, who proposed in 1942 that Mexican free-tail bats could carry timed incendiary bombs. The bats would be dropped over urban areas and, following their instincts, roost in the attics and roofs of wooden buildings. Then boom, a delayed detonation would start fires. Surprisingly, the project received full military approval. Tests were conducted at a base in New Mexico, but during one trial, some bats escaped and accidentally burned down a hangar and the general's car. In 1944, the program was scrapped as attention shifted to the atomic bomb. Launched in 1931 by the Newport News Shipbuilding and Dry Dock Company, the SS President Coolidge was one of the largest passenger ships ever built in the US at the time. Operated by Dollar Steamship Lines, it featured luxurious cabins, saltwater swimming pools, and fine dining for its trans-Pacific route between San Francisco and Asia. With the onset of World War II, the U.S. War Department requisitioned the ship in 1941 and converted it into a troop transport capable of carrying up to 5,000 soldiers. On October 6, 1942, the President Coolidge departed San Francisco for Espiritu Santo in the New Hebrides, now Vanuatu. On October 26, 1942, unaware of newly laid American naval mines, the ship struck 2 mines while entering Saigon Channel. Captain Henry Nelson managed to ground the vessel, enabling the safe evacuation of nearly everyone on board. Out of more than 5,000 personnel, only 2 lives were lost: Fireman Robert Reed and Captain Elwood J. Ewart, who heroically returned to rescue trapped soldiers. The wreck now lies on its port side at depths ranging from 69 to 240 feet, or 21 to 73 meters. In 1983, the site was declared a protected marine reserve by the Vanuatu government. Divers can explore an abundance of preserved artifacts, military gear, and the famed porcelain relief known as the Lady. The Panzerzug, or German armored train, was one of the most imposing and unconventional weapons in the Nazi arsenal. These steel behemoths combined the firepower of armored vehicles with the mobility of the railroad, serving as rolling fortresses armed, armored, and capable of transporting troops and tanks. Based on 19th century ideas, these trains were revived by Hitler's war machine, especially on the vast and unstable Eastern Front, where railways were crucial for supply lines. Panzerzüge were created by reinforcing existing locomotives and rail cars with thick steel plating to withstand firearms, explosives, and even anti-tank weapons. They were equipped with anti-aircraft guns, machine guns, tank turrets, and heavy artillery, often mounted on rotating platforms. Some trains featured command cars, reconnaissance cars, or flak wagons functioning as fully mobile battle formations. Others carried tanks or infantry ready to be deployed at strategic points. Especially in Poland, the Balkans, and the Soviet Union, they played a major role in suppressing resistance and protecting vital rail connections. Beyond their combat power, they had enormous psychological impact, a thundering symbol of Nazi dominance on the rails. Deep in the Libyan desert, one of the most astonishing World War II relics was discovered, a sand-covered vehicle belonging to the British Long-Range Desert Group, LRDG. This elite unit was established in 1940 for reconnaissance in raids behind enemy lines in North Africa. Operating far from supply chains, they relied on expert navigation and heavily modified vehicles to endure the harsh desert. The abandoned vehicle was found decades later in near-perfect condition, likely left behind after a failed mission due to mechanical failure or fuel shortage. Thanks to the dry climate, it was remarkably well preserved, complete with personal items, supplies, and weapons. Amazingly, even the original tires remained intact, and maps with handwritten notes were still in the glove compartment, as if the crew might return at any moment. Typically a Chevrolet 30 CWT truck, the vehicle was adapted for the desert with extra fuel tanks, water containers, radios, and even machine guns. The find underscores the isolation and risks of these missions, where even minor setbacks could prove fatal under the unforgiving desert sun. The Panther tank was a medium tank developed by Nazi Germany during World War II. It was intended as a counterpart to the Soviet T-34 and as a replacement for the Panzer III and Panzer IV tanks. The Panther is often considered one of the best tanks of World War II due to its excellent combination of firepower, mobility, and protection. It featured sloped armor, a powerful main gun, and good mobility. The Panther saw action for the first time during the Battle of Kursk in 1943. However, the Panther tank had some issues. Early models suffered from mechanical and reliability problems, and more Panthers were lost due to engine issues than enemy action during the Battle of Kursk. The tank also had a fundamental problem with the gunner's sight, making it difficult to quickly locate targets. Its combat capabilities influenced the development of heavier tanks by the Allies. It's noteworthy that the Panther tank was captured by enemy troops on certain occasions. Russian forces captured several Panthers and used them against the Nazis on the Eastern Front. However, they were abandoned due to their complexity and difficulty in repairing them. During a secret visit to Finland on the occasion of Marshal Carl Gustav Mannerheim's 75th birthday, Adolf Hitler's self-deception was accidentally captured on a secret audio recording. Without Hitler's knowledge, a sound technician named Thor Dahmen managed to record the first 11 minutes of a private conversation between Hitler and Mannerheim. This recording is the only known instance where Hitler speaks in an informal and off-the-record manner. On the tape, Hitler dominates the conversation, while others at the table, including Mannerheim, President Risto Ryti, and General Feldmarschall Wilhelm Keitel, remain largely silent. Hitler discusses the failure of Operation Barbarossa, Italian defeats in North Africa, the invasions of Yugoslavia and Greece, his surprise at the Soviet Union's tank production capacity, and his concerns about Romanian oil extraction. In the conversation, he explains to Mannerheim why the attack on Russia did not go as planned. He admits he was not well prepared and underestimated the strength of Russia. Hitler was also caught lying about the number of tanks in the Red Army. After 11 minutes, Hitler's SS guards discovered Dahmen's recording and threatened him.
The Maas tank, also known as the Panzerkampfwagen VII Maas, was a super heavy tank developed by Nazi Germany during World War II. It was intended to be the largest and most heavily armored tank ever built. However, only 2 prototypes were constructed, and neither saw combat. Today, one of these prototypes is on display at the Kubinka Tank Museum near Moscow, Russia. The tank was a technical marvel, weighing approximately 188 tons, with exceptionally thick armor up to 8.7 inches or 220 millimeters in some places. It was powered by a massive 1,200 horsepower engine, allowing it to reach a top speed of about 13 miles per hour or 21 kilometers per hour. After the war, the remaining Maas prototype was captured by the Soviet Union and taken to the Kubinka Tank Museum, where it remains on display. The tank's enormous size and advanced technology make it a captivating attraction for visitors, especially those interested in military history and technology. Although the tank never achieved its intended combat purposes, just the sight of it's enough to evoke awe in others. Could you imagine what it would be like if this thing had been deployed in combat? It was by complete coincidence during a harpooning contest that a Junkers Ju-87 aircraft was discovered in the Adriatic Sea off the coast of Croatia. Divers found it in September of 2014 and made history with this find. The Junkers Ju-87 was both a dive bomber and a ground attack aircraft. When it made a dive, you could hear a terrifying siren-like sound, giving people on the ground a great fright. The plane was found standing on the seabed at a depth of about 28 meters. For a plane that's been in the ocean for decades, it's still almost completely intact. Moreover, it doesn't really look like a wreck.
The most feared torpedo of the war? That title goes to Japan's Type 93, nicknamed the Long Lance by the Allies. It used oxygen-enriched air instead of compressed air, could travel over 90 kilometers per hour, 56 miles per hour, had a range of 25 miles or 40 kilometers, and carried about 1,100 pounds or 500 kilograms explosive payload. Japanese destroyers and cruisers used it with devastating effect in battles like Savo Island and Guadalcanal. It left no trail of bubbles, making it nearly invisible until it struck. As Japan's position weakened, they developed even deadlier versions like the Kaiten, a manned suicide torpedo. In 1944, these modified Type 93s were outfitted with a cockpit and larger warhead of 2,866 pounds, or 1,300 kilograms. Pilots would steer them directly into enemy ships in kamikaze-style attacks. Launched from submarines, Kaitens occasionally succeeded in sinking ships, such as the USS Mississiniwa. During World War II, the United States faced a severe steel shortage, prompting the search for alternative shipbuilding materials. Concrete proved to be a viable option, leading to the construction of 24 concrete ships by McCloskey and Company in Tampa, Florida, starting in July 1943. These so-called McCloskey ships were made of ferrocement, concrete reinforced with steel mesh, making them surprisingly strong and seaworthy. Two of these ships, the SS David O. Sailor and SS Vitruvius, participated in the D-Day landings. The rest primarily served as transport and training vessels in the South Pacific. In December 1948, 9 McCloskey ships were sunk off the coast of Kiptopeke Beach, Virginia, to form a breakwater protecting the Little Creek Cape Charles Ferry Terminal. The ships lie in a row, some partially protruding from the water, shielding the dock from the rough conditions of the Chesapeake Bay. The Raupenschlepper Ost, or RSO, was Nazi Germany's practical answer to one of the greatest obstacles on the Eastern Front: mud. Not a combat vehicle, nor a technological marvel, but a rugged tracked tractor that quite literally kept the Wehrmacht moving. Developed by Steyr-Daimler-Puch and introduced in 1942 after the disastrous First Russian Winter, the RSO was designed for one purpose: to drive where nothing else could. With its tracks, high ground clearance, and enclosed cab, it could easily navigate snow, mud, and rubble. It towed anti-tank guns, delivered supplies to isolated units, recovered stranded vehicles, and in some variants was even armed with rocket launchers or anti-aircraft guns. Its simplicity made production relatively cheap and fast, which was crucial in the later years of the war. Thanks to its basic technology, it could often be repaired in the field with limited resources. The RSO was used not only on the Eastern Front, but also in Italy and the Balkans. Even after the war, some models continued to serve farmers and repair crews for years. It was slow, but extremely reliable. By war's end, tens of thousands had been built, and saw service on almost every front. On the remote, rugged island of Shikotan, part of the Kuril chain between Japan and Russia, rusting Japanese tanks from World War II still lie abandoned. These vehicles were once part of Japan's Imperial Defense Forces, stationed there to maintain control over the Pacific. In August 1945, just before the official end of the war, the Soviet Union launched a military campaign to seize the Kurils. Fierce fighting broke out on Shikotan as part of a broader Soviet offensive against Japan. Following Japan's surrender shortly after, the troops withdrew, leaving their equipment behind. Since then, the island has remained mostly deserted, and the tanks have been left to the mercy of time and weather. Covered in moss and shrubbery, they stand as quiet reminders of a long-forgotten battle in the far northeast of Asia. For military historians and adventurous travelers, Shikotan offers a fascinating open-air museum where nature and history intertwine. The Olympic torch relay as we know it today originated in Nazi Germany. It was introduced for the 1936 Olympic Games in Berlin and was used by the Nazi regime to promote their ideology and present a false image of peaceful Germany. The torch relay was a carefully orchestrated propaganda tool aimed at connecting Germany with ancient empires and creating a sense of historical continuity. This event was modeled after a similar event that took place in 80 BC in Athens. Karl Diem, a former German Olympian involved in organizing the Berlin Olympics, designed the relay to evoke a sense of ancient tradition and connect it with the current Nazi party. The idea resonated with Nazi propagandists, who used torch relays and rallies to attract mainly young Germans to the Nazi movement. The torch relay involved 3,422 torchbearers, with each bearer covering 3,280 feet, on the route from the site of the ancient Olympic Games in Olympia, Greece, to Berlin. As the torch was passed, it traversed various locations before reaching its final destination. The relay reached its climax with the lighting of the Olympic flame in the stadium, symbolizing the start of the Games. Nazis were fascinated by secret societies, UFOs, and mystical energy sources. If extraterrestrials visited ancient Sumeria, why couldn't the Nazis find them? A book titled The Coming Race was anonymously published in May 1871. The Coming Race revolves around a narrator who discovers a hidden underground world inhabited by angelic beings. He befriends one who leads him out through a city reminiscent of ancient Egyptian architecture. This society thrives thanks to advanced technology, with their most powerful tool being a ubiquitous substance called vril. This fluid is a latent energy source that the spiritually advanced inhabitants can harness through the training of their willpower, depending on their genetic makeup. This mastery grants them access to extraordinary power that they can control at will. The association of the Black Sun with the occult can be traced back to a German novel from 1991 titled The Black Sun of Tashi Lungpo by the pseudonymous author Russell McLeod. The symbol of the Black Sun represents a mystical energy source believed to rejuvenate the Aryan race. Operation Bernard was a secret operation conducted with the aim of destabilizing the economies of enemy countries by flooding them with counterfeit banknotes. The operation was named after its originator, Bernard Kruger. It began in 1942 and involved a team of skilled counterfeiters, many of whom were Jewish prisoners from concentration camps. These prisoners were forced to produce counterfeit British pounds and American dollars, as well as other currencies with meticulous attention to detail. The counterfeit banknotes were designed to be indistinguishable from genuine ones. The primary target of Operation Bernard was the British economy, as the Nazis wanted to undermine the value and confidence in British currency. The counterfeit banknotes were so convincing that they were widely circulated in various countries, including Britain, causing significant disruptions to their economies. It also had the potential to sow chaos in financial systems and undermine the trust in legitimate currency. As the war neared its end and Allied forces approached, the operation was scaled down and eventually discontinued. The counterfeit notes that were not used were dumped in Austria's Lake Toplitzky to conceal evidence of the operation. An interesting fact is that Operation Bernard is known as one of the largest counterfeiting operations in history. The invasion of Novi Sad was a military operation by the armed forces of Hungary during World War II. The troops occupied Novi Sad after the Axis invaded Yugoslavia. This operation cost the lives of over 3,000 to 4,000 Serbs, Jews, and Roma civilians. In 1971, the famous sculptor Jovan Sodarovic built this next monument, which honors the thousands of lives lost. Built on the banks of the Danube, the monument is supposed to represent a mother, a father, and 2 children. However, from afar, the figures look more like aliens than humans. Long before Japan's Shinkansen or Germany's Transrapid, German engineer Hermann Kemper proposed a train that would float above its tracks using magnetic force. In the 1930s, his concept gained serious interest under the Third Reich's broader technological ambitions, not as a military project, but as a symbol of progress and modern vision. In 1934, Kemper patented a system that used electromagnetic repulsion. By activating coils along a track with alternating current, the train could levitate and move without touching the rails. The Ministry of Aviation funded a working prototype, which was tested in rural Germany in the late 1930s. Though it didn't achieve the speeds or efficiency of today's maglev trains, it proved that magnetic levitation was technically feasible, decades ahead of its time. Focus eventually shifted to other technologies, and Kemper's project stalled. Still, his invention remained a source of inspiration, and decades later, countries like Japan and Germany would revive and refine the concept into modern high-speed systems. During World War II, Britain developed the H2S radar, the world's first airborne ground mapping radar to help bombers locate targets from the air with greater accuracy. Introduced in 1943, it enabled Royal Air Force bombers, like the Halifax and Lancaster, to see the ground through clouds and darkness. The radar emitted pulses that bounced off cities, rivers, and coastlines. These reflections were displayed on a cathode ray screen in the cockpit, providing a rudimentary but useful terrain map. Thanks to H2S, aircraft could navigate and identify bombing targets more accurately, especially useful for nighttime raids on cities like Hamburg and Berlin. But the secret didn't last long. In February 1943, a Sterling bomber carrying the system was shot down over the Netherlands. The Germans recovered the device and soon developed the Fuji 350 Naxos, a radar detector capable of homing in on H2S signals. This marked both a technological leap and a new vulnerability. Built in 1938 by Mitsubishi for Toyo Kaiyun Kisen Kaisha, the Fujikawa Maru was originally a refrigerated cargo ship operating routes between South America and India. In December 1940, it was requisitioned by the Imperial Japanese Navy and converted into an auxiliary vessel for transporting aircraft. It was armed with 15-centimeter guns salvaged from older warships, and primarily served by ferrying aircraft and supplies across the Pacific. The Fujikawa Maru took part in several operations, including the Battle of Midway and missions in the Aleutians, Rabaul, Tarawa, and the Marshall Islands. In September 1943, it was damaged by a torpedo from USS Permit, and again in December by airstrikes. Both times it was repaired. On February 17, 1944, during Operation Hailstone, a massive U.S. Navy attack on Truk Lagoon. The ship was anchored near Eaton Island. It was hit by a torpedo from aircraft launched from USS Bunker Hill, suffering severe damage. The next day, it was attacked again by aircraft from USS Essex in Monterey, and it sank on February 18, 1944. The wreck rests upright at depths between 108 and 131 feet, or 33 and 40 meters in Truk Lagoon. Divers can explore its cargo holds, where dismantled Mitsubishi, A6M0 fighters, and a rare A5M Claude, believed to be the only remaining one in the world, still lie. The wreck is encrusted with vibrant corals and sponges and is surrounded by thriving marine life. The Blohm Voss 238 was the largest aircraft ever built by Nazi Germany and could have been the world's largest operational aircraft had it entered full production. Designed by the Hamburg-based shipbuilding and aircraft manufacturer Blohm Voss, the BV-238 was an ambitious project. It was a giant flying boat intended for long-range transport, maritime reconnaissance, and possibly even bombing missions. With a wingspan of over 197 feet, or 60 meters, and a weight exceeding 100 tons, the BV-238 was a true airborne giant. Powered by 6 Daimler-Benz DB 603 V12 engines, it could carry troops, vehicles, or cargo over vast distances. The fuselage was ship-like for water landings, with multiple stabilizers and high-mounted wings. Technically innovative, it used lightweight alloys and a reinforced internal structure to keep its weight manageable. The only completed version, the V1, first flew in 1944 over the German Schal Lake. Before it could enter military service, it was destroyed by Allied fighter bombers while moored, bringing Nazi Germany's dream of air supremacy to an end. In 2015, the wreck of the aircraft carrier USS Independence was discovered off the coast of California, near the Farallon Islands. Although it had been underwater since 1951, the ship was astonishingly well preserved. Sonar scans even revealed an aircraft still inside the hangar, as if it was waiting to launch. The Independence served actively in the Pacific from 1943 to 1945 and took part in several World War II operations. After the war, it was used during nuclear testing at Bikini Atoll, sustaining considerable damage. It was later brought back to San Francisco for scientific studies on the effects of radiation in warships. In 1951, the vessel was intentionally sunk. The wreck was mapped using an advanced underwater robot called Echo Ranger. While there are some holes visible in the hangar deck, most of the structure remains intact. It's also estimated that around 300 other wrecks lie in the surrounding area.
Adolf Hitler didn't have a plan A or B. He had plans from A to Z. Here's the final plan, the Z plan. This was Hitler's ambitious program for expanding the Navy, aimed at building a fleet that could rival the British Royal Navy. The plan included the construction of several H-class battleships. Hitler approved the Z plan in January 1939, proposing the construction of approximately 800 ships between 1939 and 1947. The program was supposed to be completed in 1945, and the main force of the Z plan consisted of 6 H-class battleships. These battleships were intended to be the core of Hitler's Z plan to refit and expand the German Navy. The battleships were designed to be larger and more powerful. However, the planned naval program was not far advanced at the start of World War II.
and the construction of the H-class battleships didn't progress significantly. Therefore, none of these battleships were ever completed or commissioned. During World War II, intriguing stories emerged about a local farmer who was reportedly summoned in the middle of the night to assist SS officers in dumping truckloads of heavy boxes into a lake. These boxes were said to contain gold and secret Nazi files. Such eyewitness accounts sparked a sort of gold rush, as divers dreamed of discovering a fortune hidden beneath the lake's surface. However, many who ventured into the treacherous waters drowned and were never seen again. In recent years, Gerhard Zauner discovered a ring at the bottom of an Austrian lake named Lake Toplitz, with Adolf Hitler's name engraved on it. He has been searching for nearly 6 decades for Hitler's stolen art collection, reportedly scattered across Europe. In 1959, he found a 72 million zloty in counterfeit British money from the Nazi era during a dive in Lake Toplitz. His personal collection now includes objects, memorabilia, weapons, and explosives used during World War II. Rumors have it that many SS Nazi generals disposed of their belongings in Lake Toplitz to hide their past after the war. So far, you can tell that the Nazis had quite ambitious plans, and after the war, the United States didn't want to lose all that knowledge. Operation Paperclip was a secret intelligence operation conducted by the United States in the aftermath of World War II. Its primary objective was to recruit and provide sanctuary for German scientists, engineers, and technicians, particularly those involved in Nazi Germany's advanced development programs. The operation began in 1945 and lasted until 1959. Under Operation Paperclip, over 1,600 German scientists, including notable figures like Wernher von Braun, were brought to the United States. These individuals were granted immunity from prosecution for their past activities, in exchange for sharing their expertise and knowledge. The recruitment of these German scientists were driven by the desire to gain a technological advantage over the Soviet Union during the early years of the Cold War. America aimed to harness the expertise of these individuals, especially in the fields of rocketry, aerospace engineering, and other advanced technologies. What if I told you that one of the most powerful warships in history, the Bismarck, is still as almost good as new at the bottom of the ocean? It was discovered in 1989 by American oceanographer Robert Ballard, the same man who found the Titanic. His talent for finding historic wrecks led him to the Bismarck. At a depth of more than 4,572 meters in the ocean, a few hundred kilometers west of the city of Brest in France. What makes the 41,000-ton Bismarck so infamous is its history as one of the world's most powerful warships. At one time, it was the key to the Nazis' plan to blockade Britain. In 1941, during one of its sightings, practically the entire British Army was sent out to destroy it in the name of control of the North Atlantic. It took a week-long chase, a torpedo, and an all-night fight to finally sink the ship, along with 2,300 German sailors. The Schienenzeppelin was a striking experimental rail vehicle developed in the early 1930s by engineer Franz Kruckenberg. Unlike traditional trains, this futuristic prototype used a massive airplane engine with a rear-mounted propeller. The frame was largely made of lightweight aluminum and shaped for maximum aerodynamic efficiency. On June 21, 1931, the Schienenzeppelin reached a speed of 143 miles per hour, or 230 kilometers per hour between Hamburg and Berlin, a rail speed record that stood for decades. Although revolutionary in design, it was never adopted on a wide scale. Concerns over safety, noise, and practicality led to a preference for electric and diesel trains. Still, the project remains a visionary milestone in railway history and continues to inspire train enthusiasts and engineers around the world. One of the quietest technological revolutions of World War II was the VT, Variable Time Proximity Fuse, a radar-guided detonation system developed by the US and Britain. Instead of detonating on impact or by timer, this small but groundbreaking device triggered explosives when they came close enough to their target. It worked with a miniature radar transmitter and receiver. As a projectile neared an aircraft or enemy formation, the radar signal bounced back and triggered the fuse at just the right distance for maximum destruction. First deployed by the US Navy in 1942 in the Pacific, the fuse proved devastating against Japanese kamikaze planes. Later, the technology was used in artillery shells during the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944. Shells exploded above trenches, rendering cover useless. General Patton even called it the most important new development of the war. The technology was so secret that even Allied soldiers rarely knew how it worked. USS Oriskany was the last Essex-class aircraft carrier completed for the US Navy. Construction began in 1944, but was temporarily halted after World War II. It resumed later under the SCB-27 modernization program, and the ship was commissioned in 1950. Oriskany served with distinction in both the Korean and Vietnam Wars, earning 2 battle stars for Korea and 10 for Vietnam. One of the ship's most tragic moments occurred in 1966, when a magnesium flare accidentally ignited, starting a fire that killed 44 crew members. Decommissioned in 1976, the Oriskany was eventually selected for use in an artificial reef program. After extensive environmental preparations, it was intentionally sunk on May 17, 2006, approximately 25 miles or 40 kilometers off the coast of Pensacola, Florida, in the Gulf of Mexico. Today, the wreck sits upright at a depth of about 213 feet or 65 meters and has become a flourishing marine ecosystem and renowned dive site, nicknamed the Great Carrier Reef. R. Reichenberg was Nazi Germany's grim response to desperation, a manned version of the notorious Vi-1 flying bomb, designed for extremely high-risk one-way missions. Based on the Fieseler Fi 103, the Reichenberg retained its signature form, a stubby pulse-jet-powered aircraft with short wings and an explosive warhead in the nose. The Argus AS-014 pulse jet produced the same piercing howl that made the V weapons infamous. Under the leadership of Otto Skorzeny, Hitler's favorite commando, a special unit was trained, consisting of volunteers from the Luftwaffe and Hitler Youth for these perilous missions. Although officially pilots were supposed to bail out in time, the chances of survival were minimal. The Reichenberg was unstable and extremely difficult to control safely. Test flights with glider models often failed, and even successful landings were highly dangerous. The training process itself was so hazardous that several test pilots died during preparation. As the war progressed and Allied air superiority grew, the project was eventually canceled entirely. Although dozens of pilots were trained, the aircraft was never deployed in combat. Lying on the floor of the Red Sea near Egypt's Sinai Peninsula is one of World War II's most famous shipwrecks, the SS Thistlegorm. This armed British merchant ship was launched in 1940 and carried military supplies for Allied forces in North America. In October 1941, while anchored in the Gulf of Suez, it was bombed by German aircraft. The cargo included ammunition, motorcycles, trucks, and even locomotives, and they all exploded, tearing the ship apart and sending it to the seafloor. The wreck was largely forgotten until Jacques Cousteau rediscovered it in 1956, with help from local fishermen. Today, the Thistlegorm rests upright at around 30 meters deep and has become an underwater museum. Divers can still see the cargo: Norton motorcycles, Bedford trucks, rifles, boots, aircraft parts, and ammunition, many still in place after more than 80 years. A massive breach in the midsection reveals the force of the blast, but much of the ship remains remarkably intact. Coral and marine life have overtaken the wreckage, creating a surreal blend of war and nature. The creation of Fanta was the result of the trade embargo posed by the United States against Nazi Germany, making it difficult to export Coca-Cola syrup. Max Keith, the leader of Coca-Cola, decided to develop a new product specifically for the German market, using only the ingredients available in Germany at that time. Thus, Fanta was created, using apple fibers and a byproduct of cheese, such as whey, as ingredients. It was introduced as a fruity drink made from whatever was available during the war. The invention was mainly driven by the need to preserve assets of the Coca-Cola Company and keep local factories running under the wartime conditions. Fanta became a popular beverage among the German population and was seen as a point of national pride. Nazi Germany was at the forefront of early interest in flying saucers due to their purported strategic importance. A curious photo from World War II shows a barely visible saucer-shaped object high above Prague Airport. The photo is said to have been taken by inventor Joseph Epp. Among the alleged prototypes created by the Nazis was the Flugkreisel designed by engineer Rudolf Schriever. During the war, both Allied and enemy personnel reported various aerial anomalies. German engineers are also believed to have developed spacecraft, including a flying saucer named Haunebu, aimed at securing victory for Hitler's Germany. Interestingly, this relates to the UFO crash in Roswell. The Roswell military base was known for housing bombers capable of transporting nuclear weapons and other highly secret projects. In the 1960 book The Morning of the Magicians by Louis Pauwels and Jacques Bergier, Berlin's Vril Society is mentioned. The authors suggest that the society may have made contact with an extraterrestrial race and dedicated themselves to creating spacecraft for interstellar travel. Reportedly, the Vril Society collaborated with the Thule Society and the Nazi Party on the development of a series of flying disc prototypes.
The Aryan Golden Cauldron is a controversial artifact that has sparked legal disputes due to its claims of association with Nazi Germany. The story of the cauldron begins with its discovery at the bottom of Germany's Chiemsee Lake, where it was found in 2001 by Jens Essig. Initially, it was believed that the cauldron was an ancient golden vessel from pre-Christian times, but doubts arose regarding its age and origin, leading to a battle over ownership. Josef Hotzenbuehler, who purchased the cauldron in 2014 for a significant amount, ultimately filed a lawsuit against Jens. Josef claims that Jens repeatedly encouraged him to buy the cauldron, asserting that it was an authentic Celtic artifact with a special significance. However, there are suggestions that the cauldron might be the work of Nazi goldsmith Otto Gar, commissioned by a member of the Nazi Party. One of the creepiest discoveries of World War II is due to a mysterious puzzle. In the 1940s, the British newspaper The Telegraph published a number of puzzles with answers such as Utah, Overlord, Omaha, Mulberry, Neptune, and Dieppe. These were all code words for the planned invasion of Normandy. On August 18, 1942, the newspaper had published a crossword puzzle with the word Dieppe. A day later, the Allies launched an attack on the port of Dieppe. On May 2, 1944, the crossword puzzle gave a clue to number 17 and the word Utah. This happened to be a code name for a branch of the U.S. Army's 4th Infantry Division. The pattern went on like this several times and was later investigated by the Secret Service. According to them, the crossword puzzles would have been a coincidence because their creator was a 54-year-old school principal. Do you think this would have been just a coincidence?
The Haft-Hohlladung, or magnetic hollow charge, was a German invention that allowed soldiers to manually attach an explosive device to enemy vehicles to pierce their armor. Introduced in 1942, the device weighed about 6.6 pounds or 3 kilograms and featured 3 powerful magnets that firmly stuck it to the metal surfaces of tanks or other armored vehicles. After attachment, the user pulled a fuse cord, triggering a short 5 to 10 second delay to allow time to retreat to safety. The shaped charge focused its explosive force into a narrow jet, capable of penetrating up to 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters of armor, enough to disable nearly any vehicle of the time. While technically impressive, its use required close physical contact with enemy targets, making deployment risky and difficult in combat. After the war, this type of weapon faded into obscurity, largely due to evolving standards around safety and tactical practicality. The Haft-Hohlladung remains a stark example of how far inventors went to find technological solutions in desperate times. As German U-boats wreaked havoc on Allied shipping lanes, the British Navy sought more effective ways to destroy submarines. Depth charges were powerful but imprecise, exploding at preset depths and often missing their targets. That's why in 1942 they developed the Hedgehog, a forward-firing anti-submarine mortar that revolutionized underwater warfare. The Hedgehog launched 24 small explosives in an oval pattern ahead of the ship while maintaining sonar contact with the target, something depth charges couldn't do. Each bomb had a contact fuse and detonated only on impact with a solid object, such as a submarine hull. This minimized wasted explosions and significantly increased hit probability. The Hedgehog was installed on escort ships like corvettes and destroyers and quickly proved its worth. Not only was it more effective, but it also had a strong psychological effect. If you heard a blast, it almost always meant a hit. Originally launched in 1917 as war hostage by Harland and Wolff in Glasgow, the ship changed names and owners several times over the years, including Milazzo, Aldersgate, Mistley-Hall, Kutaisi, and Dnipro, before being renamed Ashkabad under Soviet control in 1938. Operated by the Soviet state shipping company Sovtorgflot, the 400 feet or 122-meter-long tanker was sailing from New York to Matanzas, Cuba, in 1942 with ballast on board. On April 29, 1942, while escorted by the British trawler HMS Lady Elsa, the Ashkabad was torpedoed by German submarine U-402 approximately 18 miles south of Cape Lookout, North Carolina. The torpedo struck the starboard side, causing the ship to settle stern first in shallow waters. All 47 crew members, including 3 women, were rescued without casualties. In the days following the attack, salvage operations were being planned, but unaware of these plans, USS Semis and HMS St. Zeno declared the damaged ship a navigational hazard and sank it with gunfire on May 3, 1942. The remains of the Ashkabad now lie at depths of 56 to 59 feet, or 17 to 18 meters off the North Carolina coast. Due to salvage and towing efforts, the wreck is widely scattered, with the 3 large boilers being the most recognizable features. The Minenräumer was one of the strangest and most mysterious vehicles Nazi Germany developed during the war. Designed as a mine-clearing vehicle, the Minenräumer looked like something out of a dystopian science fiction film rather than a battlefield machine. With its spiked wheels, thick armor, and insect-like profile, it was built to drive straight through minefields and absorb heavy explosions. The prototype was built in 1942 by Krupp in collaboration with Alket and Mercedes-Benz. The Minenräumer had 3 colossal wheels, 2 in front and 1 in the rear, fitted with metal cleats to absorb explosive blasts. The crew compartment was armored and positioned between the front wheels, protected from detonations. However, the concept proved impractical. The vehicle was slow, mechanically unreliable, too heavy for rough terrain, and entirely unsuitable for dynamic warfare. After a few tests, the project was quietly cancelled, and only 1 prototype was ever built, which never saw combat. Flamenco Beach, located on the smallest island of Colabera in Puerto Rico, is often hailed as one of the most beautiful beaches in the Caribbean. But amid the paradise lies an unexpected sight: rusting American tanks, relics of past military activity. The U.S. Navy used this place for gunnery and bombing practice from the early 20th century until 1975. During this period, tanks and other vehicles were used as targets. After years of public protests and political pressure, the Navy withdrew, but left much of its equipment behind. The tanks are now covered in graffiti and slowly being consumed by salt, sand, and sea air. Some are partially submerged or have been transformed into informal snorkeling attractions. Locals and tourists have embraced the remains, blending them into the landscape in creative ways. Once machines of war, these tanks now stand as artistic monuments, popular photo ops for some, and silent symbols of a turbulent history for others. The Silbervogel was a design for a rocket-powered suborbital bomb aircraft created by Eugen Songer and Irene Brett in the late 1930s for the Nazi Germany. It was conceived as part of a project which aimed to develop long-range bombers capable of reaching the United States from Europe. It was intended to be a suborbital aircraft, capable of flying at high altitudes at extreme speeds, and it would be powered by a rocket engine. The plan was to launch the aircraft from a 2-mile-long monorail track, accelerated by a rocket-powered sled. Once the guide rail ended, the main rocket engine would ignite, propelling the aircraft to its maximum velocity. The aircraft was intended to glide back to Earth after reaching peak altitude, enabling reuse and cost savings. Despite the design, a physical prototype was never built. The project remained largely on paper, and the end of World War II brought an end to the further development. Believe it or not, the design and concepts contributed to the development of later spaceplanes. For example, the regeneratively cooled rocket engine became a lasting feature in the design of future rocket engines. One secret they definitely don't want you to know is one of the times they failed. Operation Mincemeat stands as a remarkable example of Allied strategic deception during World War II. Its goal was to divert the attention of German forces from the actual Allied plan to land on the island of Sicily in 1943. In the early hours of April 30, 1943, the body of a fictitious British officer named Major Martin was released into the sea from the British submarine HMS Seraph. The body was left afloat just over half a mile off the southern coast of Spain. Spanish authorities retrieved the body, and the secret documents it carried were discreetly opened, photographed, and then passed to German intelligence officers in Spain. The Germans promptly reacted to the false information. They doubled their troop strength on Sardinia, believing it to be the target of the Allied invasion. Numerous German divisions were relocated to Greece and the Balkans. Meanwhile, the actual Allied invasion of Sicily took place on July 9, 1943, catching the German defenders completely by surprise. The success of the operation became evident when the Allies quickly and decisively conquered the island in just over a month. Have you ever wondered where Hitler might be buried? This remains a subject of speculation to this day, and is unlikely to ever be officially disclosed. However, another wooden casket was found, built during World War II by James Alexander Shute. James decided to contribute to the war effort through fundraising activities by creating a wooden casket. He invited people to donate a penny for the war effort and drive a nail into Hitler's coffin. The casket eventually ended up in the possession of his neighbor and was later purchased by the National Army Museum in New Zealand. While Hitler wasn't buried in the casket, another casket was discovered by the son of an antique collector. It's a sealed casket that reportedly contains actual hair and a gold foil cover. As you wander through the unoccupied territory in southeastern California and western Arizona, the last thing you would expect is a training center in the middle of the desert that dates back to 1942, where thousands of soldiers underwent brutal exercises to fight in the war. Welcome to the Desert Training Center.
It had been established in the 1940s by the US Army, and its purpose was to prepare soldiers to fight the German Army in North Africa. The training center had a huge area of nearly 50,000 square miles, and it was meant to mimic extreme conditions. For 2 years, a total of 13 infantry divisions and 7 armored divisions stayed there. The area included airfields, hospitals, and ammunition storage facilities. When the German Afrika Korps was defeated in 1943, the center was no longer needed, but it continued to exist for another year. Today, however, you can still see remnants of the past in the tank tracks on the ground.
The Panzerfaust was a revolutionary single-use anti-tank weapon designed to give ordinary soldiers the ability to fight back against enemy armored vehicles. Introduced in 1943, it offered a simple and affordable solution to threats like the Soviet T-34 and American Sherman tanks. The weapon consisted of a metal tube about 3 feet 3 inches or 1 meter long, fitted with a specially shaped warhead designed to concentrate explosive force on a single point. Since the launcher was discarded after use, it was ideal for rapid mass production and easy transport. Aiming was done with simple sights, and the projectile was launched without recoil. The Panzerfaust saw extensive use in the later years of the war and was distributed to regular troops, paratroopers, and local defense units. After the war, its design inspired modern weapons, such as the Soviet RPG-2 and RPG-7, which would go on to become globally influential for decades. In a desperate attempt to break through heavily fortified German defenses, the United States launched Operation Aphrodite. This was a bold and deadly experiment to convert retired bombers into radio-controlled flying bombs. One of the earliest attempts at drone warfare, the technology was so primitive at the time that it was as dangerous as it was innovative. Beginning in 1944, the plan involved stripping old B-17s and B-24s down to their frames, and filling them with up to 20,000 pounds, or 9,000 kilograms of Torpex explosives. A 2-man crew would take off, climb to about 2,000 feet, arm the explosives, and parachute out. A second aircraft would then take remote control and guide the bomber toward hardened targets, like V-weapon sites, U-boat pens, and underground bunkers. But the missions were extremely risky and prone to technical failure. On August 12, 1944, Lieutenant Joseph P. Kennedy Jr., older brother of the future U.S. President, was killed when his aircraft exploded shortly after takeoff. The program was quietly canceled after multiple failures and the high human cost. The Tangalooma Wrecks lie off the west coast of Morton Island in Queensland, Australia. Between 1963 and 1984, a total of 15 ships were deliberately sunk here to form a breakwater for small boats and to create a unique dive site. Several of these vessels have histories dating back to World War II. While most of the wrecks consist of decommissioned barges, dredges, and flat-bottomed vessels, some did indeed serve in military roles during the war. HMAS Bermagui, originally a steel gravel barge built in 1912, served in World War II before being scuttled at Tangalooma. HMAS Uki also served during the war and was later sunk as part of the Breakwater Project. Other ships like the Maryborough, built in 1885, were repurposed after the war to reinforce this anchorage barrier. Today, the Tangalooma Wrecks are popular with snorkelers and divers. Resting in shallow waters ranging from 6 to 33 feet or 2 to 10 meters deep, they are easily accessible for divers of all skill levels. Over the years, the wrecks have become covered in coral and transformed into vibrant artificial reefs, home to more than 100 species of fish, dolphins, dugongs, and wobbegong sharks. U-864 was no ordinary submarine. It was a ghost ship full of secrets, a silent witness to Nazi Germany's hidden ambitions. Instead of torpedoes, this U-boat carried advanced technology that could have altered the course of the war. As part of Operation Caesar, its mission was to transport jet engine components, blueprints, and over 60 tons of mercury to Japan. Commissioned in 1943 under Corvette and Capitan Ralph Reimar Wolfram, U-864 set out in December 1944 from Kiel, following a route north of Scotland through the South Atlantic and toward Japan. But things quickly went wrong. Mechanical problems forced the submarine to return to Bergen in Norway. There, British codebreakers at Bletchley Park intercepted its mission. On February 9, 1945, near the Norwegian island of Fedje, the British submarine HMS Venturer, commanded by Lieutenant Jimmy Launders, detected the U-864. As both submarines maneuvered underwater, Launders calculated a distance shot. executing the first successful submerged submarine versus submarine attack in history. All 73 crew members perished. In 2003, the wreck was rediscovered with 1,857 barrels of toxic mercury still on board, which continued to leak into the seabed, causing an ongoing environmental disaster off the Norwegian coast. On the windswept shores of Atka Island in Alaska lies the rusted wreckage of a B-24D Liberator, a silent remnant of World War II. This heavy bomber, part of the U.S. Army Air Forces, once played a key role in America's defense against Japanese attacks in the Northwest Pacific. However, the Atka plane never saw combat. In 1942, it was forced to make an emergency landing due to engine trouble and has remained at the site ever since. The Aleutian Campaign is often a forgotten chapter of World War II history, but it was a crucial and extremely harsh front, marked by isolation and brutal weather. The B-24D was one of America's most versatile aircraft, capable of carrying heavy bomb loads over long distances. Though the crew survived landing, the aircraft was too difficult to recover in the rugged terrain. Rather than destroy or salvage it, the wreck was simply abandoned on the tundra. Today, the Atka B-24D lies in an eerie state of decay. Its fuselage is twisted by decades of snow, wind, and salty air. Wings and engines are covered in moss, lichens, and nesting seabirds, far from any battlefield or museum.
The first X and Heinzel HS-293 were some of the first precision-guided weapons developed by Nazi Germany. They made their debut around the time of the Allied attack on Solano in September 1943. These radio-controlled weapons posed a new challenge to fleet defense and scorned hits on Allied ships, opening a new chapter in modern warfare. The Heinzel HS-293 was a radio-controlled glide bomb with a rocket motor, designed as a guided anti-ship missile. It used an autopilot to maintain a straight course, and could be launched from a bomber at a sufficient distance to keep the aircraft out of reach of anti-aircraft fire. A bombarder guided the missile with a joystick and a radio control. The Fritz X was an armored guided anti-ship bomb. The Fritz X carried bombers, and was guided to its target by a crew member in the mothership, using a joystick. These weapons were designed to be dropped from an aircraft and guided to their targets, making them forerunners of today's smart bombs. During World War II, officials involved in the Manhattan Project were convinced they were in a race with Germany to develop the atomic bomb. The foundation for nuclear weapons, known as nuclear fission, was discovered in Berlin in December 1938. This revelation caused significant unrest in the United States, even though the war was still 10 months away. In April 1939, a secret conference in Berlin marked the beginning of the German atomic weapons program. As a result, the Ministry of Education launched an official uranium research program and banned the export of uranium to other countries. This occurred 5 months before President Franklin D. Roosevelt received Albert Einstein's letter warning him of the potential for nuclear weapons. The wreck of a boat carrying barrels of heavy water for German nuclear scientists was found under a Norwegian lake. In 1944, Norwegian Special Forces sank a German hydro ferry, but until now it was unclear whether the ship contained the essential ingredients for Hitler's nuclear bomb. Recently, tests confirmed that at least 18 barrels found within the wreck contained heavy water, a crucial substance for controlling the nuclear fission process. Heavy water played a vital role in the German nuclear program, and its loss had a decisive impact. It effectively halted their reactor program. The V-2 rocket was the world's first long-range guided ballistic missile and was primarily used against Allied targets, particularly in the later stages of the war. It was powered by a liquid fuel engine and had a range of about 200 miles or 320 kilometers. It could reach speeds of up to 3,480 miles per hour or 5,600 kilometers per hour and could carry a warhead of about 1 ton. The rocket was launched vertically and reached a maximum altitude of about 60 miles or 97 kilometers before descending at supersonic speeds towards its target. Approximately 4,000 V-2 rockets were assembled at various locations, with Peenemünde located at the Harz Mountain in central Germany, being the primary production site. The production of the V-2 rocket was a complex and large-scale operation involving various components such as engines, guidance systems, and warheads. They were transported to large sites and fired at targets in England, Belgium, and other Allied areas. Many of the German scientists who work on the V-2 program, including Werner von Braun, were later recruited by the United States as part of Operation Paperclip. What we see here is Hitler's flytrap structure, and the structure is shrouded in many mysteries. It's located in a village in Silesia, Poland, and is surrounded by many trees. It's also called Hitler's Stonehenge because it has no official name. The Nazis supposedly left it behind and then never returned to retrieve it or explain its purpose. Theories about the purpose of this structure vary. Some claim it was a launch pad for UFOs, or that they were building a flying saucer. Other people say it's on top of Project Rise, a large-scale and secret construction project with a series of secret tunnels. What do you think the purpose of this structure was? Let me know in the comments.
The Junkers. Ju 390 was one of Nazi Germany's most ambitious aviation projects. This massive aircraft was designed to reach targets as far as the American East Coast, across the Atlantic Ocean. In the early 1940s, aircraft manufacturer Junkers developed this six-engine giant as an extended version of the Ju 290. Originally intended for maritime reconnaissance and transport, the Ju 390 became most famous for its rumored connection to the mysterious America Bomber program. With a wingspan of nearly 164 feet, or 50 meters, and a theoretical range of over 6,000 miles, or 9,700 kilometers, it could have potentially reached New York. 2 prototypes were built, and at least one successfully flew in 1943. It was tested for long-range missions, aerial reconnaissance, and cargo transport. What cemented the aircraft's legendary status were post-war rumors that it had flown close to New York before returning safely to Europe. Ultimately, the project was cancelled in 1944, as wartime priorities shifted, materials became scarce, and focus turned toward defensive technologies. Both prototypes were dismantled, and further development plans were shelved for good. In the early 1940s, the Soviet Union experimented with one of the most ambitious and bizarre airborne warfare concepts, gliding tanks. The idea was to equip light tanks with detachable wings and a tail section so they could be towed by an aircraft and glide into battle without the need for a landing transport plane. The most well-known model was the Antonov A-40, also called the flying tank. Designed by the legendary Soviet engineer Oleg Antonov, it consisted of a T-60 light tank fitted with large wooden biplane wings and a twin tail. The tank itself served as both fuselage and landing gear. In 1942, a test was conducted where a modified T-60 was towed by a TB-3 bomber. Due to the weight, however, it had to be released early. The tank glided briefly, made a hard landing, and was recovered, proving the concept theoretically possible but completely impractical. Poor aerodynamics, excessive weight, and underpowered engines made the project infeasible. The vessel known as USS Fenikite began life as the luxury yacht Celt, built in 1902 by Pusey and Jones in Wilmington, Delaware, for railroad magnate J. Rogers Maxwell. Over the decades, the ship underwent multiple transformations and served in various roles, from private yacht to Navy patrol vessel. In 1917, the U.S. Navy acquired the ship and renamed it USS Sachem, deploying it as a coastal patrol vessel. Notably, inventor Thomas Edison used it as a floating laboratory to conduct research on anti-submarine warfare. After returning to civilian use, the vessel served as a fishing and excursion boat. In 1942, the Navy reacquired it and renamed it USS Fenikite. It patrolled the Florida Keys and was later used as a sonar training ship. Decommissioned in 1945, the ship was sold back to its previous owner and resumed civilian service. Post-war, it operated under the names Sightseer and later Circle Line FAF, providing sightseeing cruises in New York City until 1983. In 1986, it was purchased by Robert Miller and transported to Kentucky. Due to neglect and lack of maintenance, the ship was eventually abandoned in Taylor Creek, where it is now locally known as the Ghost Ship. The Sturmtiger was one of Nazi Germany's most terrifying and unusual armored vehicles, specifically designed to destroy heavily fortified targets. Instead of engaging enemy tanks, it was intended to wipe out bunkers, fortifications, and entire city blocks with a single devastating shot. Built on the chassis of the infamous Tiger I, the Sturmtiger featured a massive superstructure instead of the standard turret, housing a 15 inches or 38 centimeter rocket mortar originally developed for the Navy. The result was a mobile cannon capable of reducing entire buildings to rubble with a single projectile. Developed after the brutal street fighting in Stalingrad, the Sturmtiger was equipped with the RW-61 rocket mortar, firing shells weighing over 770 pounds or 350 kilograms, both physically and psychologically devastating. The vehicle weighed more than 65 tons, and to manage the gun's enormous recoil, it was fitted with a complex system of dampers and venting ports. Sturmtigers were deployed during the Warsaw Uprising, the Battle of the Bulge, and the defense of the Rhineland, serving as mobile fortresses that could delay enemy breakthroughs or destroy strategic targets. During World War II, the G4M Betty was a long-range twin-engine bomber used by the Imperial Japanese Navy. While it was praised for its impressive range and bomb load, It was also notorious for its vulnerability, due to a lack of armor and self-sealing fuel tanks. The Betty played a major role in Japan's aerial campaigns across the Pacific. One of the most haunting remnants of this aircraft can be found on Balalay Island, part of the Shortland Islands near Bougainville and the Solomon Islands. The island was occupied by Japanese forces, who built an airfield there using brutal forced labor and prisoners of war. Several G4M Bettys operated from or passed through Balalay. After heavy Allied bombings and the island's isolation, many aircraft were destroyed or simply abandoned in the jungle. In one particularly striking spot, an almost intact G4M lies, slowly being overtaken by nature. Its fuselage and wings are now cloaked in moss, rust, and even ivy, silent witnesses to the island's violent past. This forgotten relic serves as a ghostly monument to the Japanese Allied and civilian lives lost during the Pacific conflict. Today, the wreck is occasionally visited by military historians, adventurers, and curious tourists. The Landkreuzer P.13a was a proposed design for a super heavy tank during World War II. This tank design is said to have been proposed in June 1942 by Edward Grote, a director at Krupp. The plan was to build a 1,000-ton tank, much heavier than the Panzer, which was at 188 tons, the heaviest tank to ever been built. It was envisioned that the tank would have a fully tracked chassis and would utilize main gun turrets. Additionally, the tank was proposed to include a garage for 2 engines and a sickbay. The project received approval from Adolf Hitler, who showed interest in its development. However, the tank was ultimately cancelled in early 1943. This vehicle was seen as a super heavy tank capable of performing complex tasks on the front lines and potentially altering the course of history. During World War II, the Allies successfully recovered a significant amount of objects and treasures. Yet, a small percentage of these items remained untraceable, reportedly hidden in tunnels, mines, and alpine lakes around the southern borders of Germany. Many intriguing stories circulate about the existence of Nazi treasures in this region, where Hitler's loyal followers planned to establish an alpine fortress. Some of these stories are based on alleged eyewitness accounts from the war's final days. One specific tale tells of a mule caravan that trekked up an alpine mountain at night. Witnesses claim to have seen a column of mules carrying what appeared to be a secret transport of hundreds of gold bars worth millions of dollars. The secrecy surrounding this operation, however, did not last long, as rumors quickly spread. Ultimately, American troops recovered the gold. Nonetheless, rumors and stories about other buried treasures and gold that were never found persist. According to local legends, some people experienced sudden wealth and prosperity after the war, further fueling speculation about hidden caches. The Nazi gold legend revolves around the alleged hidden treasure of Nazi leaders believed to be in the Lake Toplitz in Australia. It's believed that the Nazis dumped crates of gold and other valuable items into the lake as they retreated in the war's final days. Lake Toplitz is deep in the rainforest, about 61 miles or 98 kilometers from Salzburg. Various witnesses, including local residents, and the nephew of Nazi SS officer Ernst Kaltenbrunner, claim that the crates are hidden in the lake. While earlier expeditions have uncovered artifacts and counterfeit money, the existence of the extensive Nazi gold treasure remains unconfirmed. Divers and treasure hunters have attempted to reach the alleged loot, buried 338 feet or 103 meters below the lake's surface. However, exploration is hindered by hazardous conditions, including a layer of sunken tree trunks and branches. Several people have even lost their lives while attempting to retrieve the treasure. During World War II, German U-boats posed a massive threat to Allied supply routes in the North Atlantic. To counter this, British inventor Geoffrey Pike proposed an unorthodox idea, building a gigantic aircraft carrier out of ice. Thus, Project Habakkuk was born, a secret British-Canadian war experiment, backed by Lord Mountbatten and initially approved by Winston Churchill himself. The ship was to be made from pykrete, a composite material of ice mixed with wood pulp, which was far stronger and melted more slowly than regular ice. Incredibly, bullets barely penetrated it, and it had impressive buoyancy. The original design was over 1965 feet or 600 meters long, weighed about 2.2 million tons, and featured runways long enough to accommodate heavy bombers. The durability of pykrete impressed engineers. Legend has it that Churchill requested a demonstration, during which a bullet ricocheted and nearly injured an officer. A prototype was built on Patricia Lake in Alberta, Canada, in 1943, but challenges quickly mounted. The ship required a complex cooling system to stay frozen even in cold waters, and materials and manpower were increasingly scarce. In 1944, Project Habakkuk was officially abandoned. The Volkswagen Schwimmwagen, also known as the Type 166, was an innovative amphibious vehicle widely used by the German Army during World War II. Designed by the famous automotive engineer Ferdinand Porsche, the Schwimmwagen was based on the Volkswagen Beetle chassis, making it versatile and practical for military operations. It was a lightweight four-wheel drive vehicle that could travel both on land and through water. Thanks to its unique hull design, the vehicle could float and propel itself in water, making it one of the most effective amphibious vehicles of its time. With over 15,000 units produced, it remains the most mass-produced amphibious vehicle in the world. Some Schwimmwagens were deployed on the Eastern Front, helping soldiers cross rivers and muddy terrain. Its compact size and surprising maneuverability also made it ideal for reconnaissance missions in difficult terrain. After the war, the Schwimmwagen remained popular due to its unique design and capabilities. British troops, who seized the Volkswagen factory in 1945, reportedly even used the vehicle recreationally.
During a snowy winter in 1978, a man drove a tank through his town and used it as a snowplow. Years later, both became infamous. The man, who was from Germany, owned a museum of World War II gear. In 2015, authorities forced their way into his home in the municipality of Heikendorf. Although they had expected to find works of art, they couldn't believe their eyes when they saw the largest occupancy of his basement, a giant Panther tank. One of the most feared tanks that was terrifying in its firepower, speed, and armor during the war. It ended up in a basement of an 84-year-old man. It was stored alongside a host of other Nazi memorabilia, including mannequins dressed in Nazi uniforms, SS lights, and the same warrior statue with a sword that once stood in front of Hitler's chancellery in Berlin. It took the soldiers about 9 hours to remove everything. The man was eventually fined nearly $300,000 for the illegal belongings.
The Lippisch P.13a was a visionary yet never built experimental interceptor aircraft. It was designed by German aerospace engineer Alexander Lippisch, known as the father of the delta wing concept. In 1944, Lippisch envisioned a lightweight aircraft that combined simplicity with high speed, maneuverability, and an alternative power source. He developed a ramjet engine that ran on powdered coal, intended as a solution to the shortage of conventional liquid fuels. The aircraft featured a wide, triangular delta wing with sharp angles and a swept-back profile for improved aerodynamics, stability, and high-speed performance. The cockpit was located at the front, followed by the wing structure and the combustion chamber, where crushed coal would be injected and ignited. The idea was bold and unique, a solid fuel propulsion system at a time when liquid fuels were increasingly scarce. Although the engineering challenges were significant and the technology had clear limitations, the concept was tested through scale models and wind tunnel experiments. While the project was eventually abandoned, the P-13A remains one of the most remarkable designs of its time, a testament to ingenuity during an age of extreme scarcity. Which Nazi technology would you want to try out? Let us know in the comments. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos we've made, click one on the screen or take a look at the channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time.